Opinions and ideas are that of the host and or contributors of the Eat This podcast and are for the purposes of general information and entertainment only and do not necessarily reflect the thoughts or ideas of the distributor. The following opinions and ideas are that of the host and or contributors of the Eat This podcast and are for the purposes of general information and entertainment only and do not necessarily reflect the thoughts or ideas of the distributor. Broadcasting to the world from inside her closet and high above the streets of Toronto, this is Eat This with Leanne. Here's your host, registered nutritionist, Leanne Phillipson.
All nicely tucked up in your skull, weighing at a mere 3 pounds, your brain is essential to every breath, heartbeat, thought, memory, emotion, your touch, your motor skills, your vision, the temperature that you feel both internally and externally, every hunger pang and every single process that regulates your body. Yep, it's all controlled by your brain. Think of the brain as the most complex computer that controls every single bodily function. Now, as well as your brain, obviously we have our nervous system. We've talked before about the sympathetic nervous system and what's involved with all the stress that's going on that we perceive, which really these days is pretty much just about everything. And then there's also the parasympathetic nervous system, which does the opposite. It really prepares the body for rest. It also helps the digestive tract to move everything along so that our bodies can efficiently take in nutrients from the food that we eat. Now, in episodes 86 and 88, we talked about the importance and really drilled down into the vagus nerve, which is a part of the parasympathetic nervous system, really, which pretty much oversees a huge array of the crucial bodily functions, including your mood, your immune response, your digestion, and your heart rate. Now, we know that there are so many influences on the brain, so many stimulus from light and sound, for instance. We talked about red light in episode 99 and 126. Then there's also stimulus from sound, the frequencies that come up from all sorts of sounds. Maybe it's something more relaxing, or it's the sound of the ocean, or birds chirping in the morning. Then there's the sudden sound that makes you jump and your heart rate just goes through the roof and feels like it's coming out of your chest. Now, yes, there are many things called brain waves that are going on. There's theta, beta, alpha, delta, well, probably a whole bunch more. I think our guest today is going to share so much more with us about that. But also, our guest today, he's eloquently said that a symphony of brainwaves is really what we need in order to be healthy and balanced. Now, many of us, we live in a city, not up in the mountains, not necessarily on the water all the time, where these influences can be quite different. And I learned that because I researched our guest today. And what our brain does for us is actually quite unimaginable. Now, there's layers, complexities of the brain, how it works, and really us figuring out how can we do things better. Well, it's a worthwhile conversation, as all the conversations that we have, and especially with the rise of cognitive decline, the increase in mental health and illness, the never-ending stressors that just they just don't quit. And really now it's happening from sunup to sundown. Unlocking your brain's key potential in terms of biohacking, which is a bit of a series that I've been talking about over the past 4 episodes. I thought finishing off with talking about the brain is a really great, like a bow, icing on the cake, Chris, but really, I'm not trying not
There's
to get
cake?
people.
Where's cake?
I know, exactly.
I don't
I'm trying
smell
not
cake.
to get people to eat too much sugar.
If you have cake and you're hiding cake from me, Leanne Phillipson, then we're going to have an issue.
Exactly. So today I've invited a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Interdisciplinary Association of Functional Neuroscience and Rehab. Thank God they shortened that to IAFNR. Our guest today, he also has a career spanning more than 3 decades. Yes, we're going to talk to Dr. Patrick Porter, and he's been on the cutting edge of brainwave entrainment technology. He is the co-developer of the first personal light and sound brain training machine that was voted the best new gadget of the year way back in 1989 at the Consumer Electronics Show. So yes, he's been inventing for a long time. His newest brain training platform, called BrainTap, is distinctively designed to activate the brain's neuroplasticity. So yes, we can influence our brain. The BrainTap headset, it uses light and sound technology in combination with Dr. Porter's proprietary guided visualization audio sessions to help people achieve what he calls brain fitness. Also, just to help you overcome stress, lose weight, stop smoking, manage pain, accelerate learning, enjoy superb sleep. Hello, yes, please, of late with all these hot flashes I keep having, and make any number of lifestyle improvements. Dr. Porter is widely recognized as an award-winning author, educator, consultant, researcher, entrepreneur, and speaker. Wow. We are thrilled to have Dr. Porter with us today. So thank you so much for being here and welcome to Eat This with Leanne.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Okay, so tell us, how did you become an expert on the brain and brainwave entrainment? I find that's such a great word. I love it. And what's your mission with this work? Because there's so much to it. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, my mission is to better 1 billion brains. And luckily, the Maharishi said you don't need to get to 1 billion. You can do one in one every 100. So I guess anywhere between, whatever we can do. I think that if we change people's stress out there, we're going to change people's lives and we're going to change the world. Myself, I started at 12, mainly because my dad was an alcoholic and he got help using a product called the Silva method, which is a meditation process. So I was brought up doing the Silva method, using something called isochronic tones, which they called the Silva method sound. It was a guided meditation using the sound. Oh. And so I've always been doing it. And then I went to school for electronics, but I still kept up with my dad on the weekends. When you have a dad that's doing seminars, you're setting up chairs. And if they don't get enough people, I'm sitting in the chairs. I probably took it 100 times or more. But in the process, he started having me do the seminar. And I liked it. So I started thinking, wow, let me get out there and start doing my own thing. And so I went to school for electronics, and this let me build something out of my fun time was actually meditating, learning, personal enrichment, improvement. So it kind of let me put the two together.
And then, all the way till now of having just such an inspiring story and having impacted so many lives. How are you going to count to 1 billion when you get to the 1 billion people?
Well, one of the nice things is that we have doctors and clinics in India and in China, so we can make that number. In America alone, we couldn't make that number, obviously. But we really work hard with a group called the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. It's like they're MIT, but they have 6 of them around the country, and they're constantly doing research. So we're constantly getting, things published about what BrainTap does. And I think as we show we just finished a really incredible study down in Brazil, even where we beat out opioids in 3 different studies for pain control. So the Brazilian government actually paid $250,000 for the studies to prove, because they want to get rid of opioids. There's such a bad problem, with people being addicted to them. And we showed that as long as they did 1 BrainTap session a day, they could have the same or better results than opioids without any negative side effects.
Over how long of a period?
The study was for 6 weeks. They're going to continue on. About the 3rd or 4th week is when the people started to get results. We found about 50% of the people almost right away were able to be pain-free between sessions, which means once a day. It took about 6 weeks for the 90% to get there. There's 10% that will feel pain-free during the session, but then the pain comes back to some degree while they're not listening. When we call it brain fitness, is because we can train the brain for pain. Just so the listeners understand, pain is only registered in the brain in a brainwave state called delta beta, which is our wide awake state. So the more stressed a person is, the worse pain becomes. So if we can lower stress, we can lower pain.
Wow, that's incredible. And we actually just did an episode with Dr. Davis Brockenshire, and I had reached out to BrainTap even before his glowing review about BrainTap, didn't he, Chris? He was just said how absolutely phenomenal it was. He had done a flight, I think, wasn't it, Chris?
Yes, he was up for anywhere from 36 to 48 straight hours. And by sitting back on the plane on his ride home, with just a session on BrainTap, it actually gave him the equivalent of a few hours sleep, even though he wasn't actually sleeping.
Yeah, so what it's doing is every brainwave we have, think of it like a Wi-Fi network. It's actually triggering the body to produce those neurotransmitters we need to feel good. That's why if we don't sleep, if you're not sleeping, you're not making the neurotransmitters. So you can't think well, you can't act well, you can't perform well. And it's really accelerate mental stability. It will accelerate into anxiety, dementia. And this is really a brain imbalance problem. If we can keep the brain balanced and we can keep the stress levels low, then there's no reason that people, have to be on all these SSRIs and things that they take that are really designed for short-term use. I mean, there's no SSRI that's out there that is prescribed for long-term use. They're all told you're going to use them for 21 to 28 days, and then you're going to get off them. But I mean, I know hundreds of people that once they're on them, it's easy to get on them, but difficult to get off. The brain is really lazy. It says, wow, you're going to make that neurotransmitter for me, or you're going to hold that serotonin for me. I'm just going to stop making it. And so it's really not good for the brain.
Talked about this on the podcast many times. My daughter, who's 16, having been in, mental health crisis, certainly throughout most of COVID, then she was put on medication, and they keep on increasing it because it actually, sort of becomes not so effective. So increases. So I'm super keen to try this out with her and also just see. But I think what you said about people being on this for a long period of time, there's no discussion of sort of coming off. There's probably there would be a tremendous amount of fear in feeling like you're going backwards in coming off any type of medication. I can only imagine the same thing to do with pain. So if you're on pain medication and that is what's keeping you going, thinking that you can get off of it, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of fear underlying both situations because, mental health or physical health would both be the same thing.
I would really encourage everyone to go to their doctor. And if you don't have a doctor that will help you get off them, find one that will, because really now they're realizing it. But the problem is the side effects. If they didn't have all those side effects, I'd be all for them. The problem is it's a different kind of pause in the brain. So we need to get the brain doing its own. And one of the things we always recommend, there's 3 waves to wellness. So as we get into this today, the first wave is nutrition. You can't outthink a bad diet. So as much as I love BrainTap and doing brain fitness, we got into this because my mother, who didn't live past 49, unfortunately, but she was really into health. And we grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan, the world's first health food store, Dr. Kellogg and all that. We ate healthy, and we went from being spastic, ADD kids to people going, how come the Porters are so smart? And well, it's because we eat right, and then we got into the mental side of it with, when you take away the sugars and the dyes and all of that. And then I think you need to get the body moving and breathing. We got into sports. So and I always tell people, you got to do something for your body to keep it moving, like yoga, Tai Chi, martial, dancing even. I mean, just shut the shades, turn on the music, dance. And you can't dance without breathing, and then do some kind of mental fitness. So, and that's where we come in with BrainTap. But I think the problem is if you're under stress like that, like you're talking about your daughter, if you're under severe stress and mental strain, your gut is not going to work right. And the gut-brain connection is so important. So that's why even Valerie Hunt out of Cal University, she's passed away now, but she did an experiment with people praying over their food. And she didn't even care what they prayed about, just calm down and pray. Okay. And then she did an experiment with people just doing some breathing relaxation techniques before they ate. And they were getting similar results. The food would digest better. They would metabolize much more. So even that is to get the nutrition out of the food. We need to calm our bodies down. Prepare it. So, prayer was a way we did that without knowing, that was what we were doing.
Prayer, intention, take a breath, all of those kind of things I think everybody needs to do. Nobody ever digested their burger while they're running from a bear. So it's just not going to happen, right? It just doesn't.
Yeah, depending how good the burger was, I'd be willing to give it a try, though.
Of course you would, Chris. Okay, so just to take a step back, could you explain the term brainwave entrainment so we kind of get that foundation, everybody understands that?
I'll talk about 6 brainwaves that are primary to our conversation. Where we're talking right now is mostly in a beta brainwave, hopefully, where nobody's falling asleep on us. Yeah. And we call this the reactionary brain, because this is where, when we're out in the world, somebody throws a ball at us, we put our hand up, we catch it, or, whatever's going on. We're all reacting to the situation. Now that's good, but it's bad. In this cycle of brainwave activity, it's all electrical. So when we're measuring our heart through heart rate variability, that's magnetic. You can measure that up to 18 feet away. With the EEG, with our brain, we have to put something on the brain to measure it. So that's why a lot of people don't know about it. Most people don't have a problem with beta, although there are some underperforming brains. Mm-hmm. This like a narcoleptic person or something like that the brain isn't performing. Yep. But the problem is when beta gets out of control, like what happened during COVID, the dopamine addiction that we have out there, dopamine can lead to other addictions too, and can lead to mood swings, because like playing video games, for instance, as an example, that's a beta process, especially single shooter and these kind of crazy games that I don't recommend, but people do play. Your brain, if you saw somebody's brain after playing them, you wouldn't have them play them. You wouldn't have or you would limit their play. Like if my grandson comes over, we say, you can do an hour on your gaming, but then you got to do a 20-minute brain test because I want to get his brain back.
Amazing.
Because we can measure their brain. It's really key how we do that. Drop down one. Between that, there's one called alpha. Alpha is one where most people know about it because that's the one we go to when we meditate. And like when we're out with friends or family having fun, and the old Jim Croce song, we never have enough time to do the things we want to do once we find them. That's because when we're doing those things we love to do, there's no time. Time gets suspended. The only place time really works for our consciousness is in beta. We have our clocks, we have our time. But when we get into alpha and the other brainwave states that I'm going to talk about, time is suspended. Like, for instance, if we get into theta, some people have a dream right before they wake up. You might have had one this morning, even somebody listening. And most of us have been trapped in a dream before, right? We've been trapped and we couldn't get out of it. And then finally we wake up and go, whoosh, I'm glad that was a dream, but the reality is that the average dream lasts 7 seconds. So when you think, so you could live a life in 7 seconds in your dreams. The whole experience about consciousness, our brain and how we operate. See, the brain doesn't organize things the way we do on a conscious level. That's why people start losing their wits under stress, right? When you're under stress, you usually don't make the same decisions. You don't, or when you're drinking too much or doing drugs, those kind of things, because it's all about cognitive decline that happens. Now, theta, which is that place where you have that lucid kind of dreaming, that state we call the inventive mind, because that's where all the inventors, past, present, and probably future, they kind of get information from that place. Edison, Einstein, all these people, they all said that they would go into this dream state and they get answers to their problems because we have the world's greatest computer, a 100 billion neural processor that's capable of doing all these things. I mean, if people can play chess in their head, that always blows me away when I find two people playing chess. They don't have a chessboard, but they keep it all in their head. That's because our brain is so powerful if we can learn to use it.
Yeah.
Between alpha, we call the intuitive mind. So if you're using that part of your mind, if you're one of those people that seems to be a problem solver, very intuitive, that's super, it's a relaxed state. But between alpha and beta, there's one called SMR. This is the sensory motor rhythm. This is where our distributor system or our balance is. And as we get older, or I like to tell people, as we get better looking, more intelligent with age, certain things happen to us. We start to lose this cognitive function. That's the brainwave that brings memories back. So if you can, it's really controlled by the hippocampus, because that's the part of our brain that takes short-term memories, makes them long-term memories, and vice versa. Those long-term memories make some short-term memories. So under stress, that brainwave suffers the greatest. But the real problem in the world today is in delta. That's the sleeping one. And the problem isn't that they don't have enough delta. The problem is they have too much delta. In 30,000 brains that we've scanned over the last 10 years, most of the world is running around with high states of delta while they're awake. You probably heard the expression, the masses are asleep. We've kind of proved that. Over 70% of most brains we scan at conferences are operating in delta, which means they have high inflammation or some kind of TBI, some kind of mental disturbance that's causing what the brain is trying to do is trying to shut down. The average person used to sleep 100 years ago, used to sleep 12 hours a day. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen that in a long time.
No, most people are quite proud of their 4 hours of sleep at night, and they think that they're managing to get it all done because they're, how do you survive on that much sleep with just a lot of coffee?
One more brainwave, and then we can move on to something. Gamma, which is getting a lot of publicity right now because they talk about gamma is like the bass drum to the brain. It also, there used to be an old commercial where the lady would sing and break a glass, and it was Memorex, the same. They play it on a cassette, and that residency is what broke that glass, right? Well, think of gamma like the residency of that woman singing, breaking amyloid plaque in the brain and clearing out the brain so we have better brain function as we age. And Lou Tai, who did the research at MIT, they have a really great program that gets 6% on average gamma. So I made a visit to her lab up at MIT with my science officer. And I said, have you ever thought about something like this? And I showed him our helmet. She goes, well, what's that going to do? It looks like a toy. And I said, well, we get 21% gamma on every session without even training for gamma. And she hardly believed it. So I left two of them behind. She confirmed what I had said. Yeah. And the next time that she was asked what's their competition, she said a little headset that cost $640. A little headset. We didn't even know we were doing gamma. Back when I started, there was no neuro anything. I mean, we were like the beginning of time. I was with a group called Light and Sound Research, and we would bring in people like Ann Wise, who was like the world's expert at EEG at the time. She traveled the world measuring people's brains. Yeah. And we started to realize that there actually are 16 different brainwaves. I just talked about 6 of them, but there's these different brainwaves that people have. And she found out that there's a certain pattern that master brainwaves have. Like if you were a master of industry, if you were a captain of the football team, let's say, or the cheerleading team, whatever it is, you have a certain brainwave.
So those brain waves, is there a rhythm and a flow to them throughout the day, kind of in your day-to-day life? Are you in one place in the morning, one place lunchtime, evening, or are you just kind of like stressed all day long?
That's a great question.
I mean, there is that, of course.
That's a great question. So it's normal for our brain to cycle. Just to give you an idea, I'll start in the afternoon because it'll make sense with what I'm saying. Every afternoon around 2:00, wherever you're at in the world, your temperature is going to drop 2 degrees. That's why people rush out and get coffee, tea, and chocolate. Not because they're hungry or thirsty or tired. It's because their body's saying it's time to take a nap. These bodies were designed to live in the Serengeti, right? When I was in kindergarten, I used to look forward to that nap. And when I got older, I was told, hey, don't nap. You're being lazy.
Yeah, unless you get to Spain or somewhere like that where they still have a siesta.
Right. Our body really does need that, because what happens when we wake up, we have a profile of our brainwave. Some people call it brain mapping. You can get those done. The ideal is to wake up in the morning with a high degree of alpha beta activity. Okay. They're 45% beta, 30% alpha. This gives you the ability to almost be, I call it Tai Chi for the mind. You can react, but you still have that interact where you can be intuitive. Like the master doesn't just react to everything. They're kind of sitting back. They get the solution. At least that's how it works in the movies. And we want it to work that way. We want it to work that way in life. But as we use the beta, anytime we use beta and alpha just to a similar degree, we're going to use energy. And part of what the brain waves do, they help to add into something called biophotic exchange. Every cell in the body is being programmed or reprogrammed by everything you can think of, your environment, your words, your food, your everything, through epigenetics. And the reason that they couldn't map out the human genome, they all celebrated this 1% of the human genome they mapped. Right. Wow, that's great. What if I answered 1% of my questions for my driver's test? I don't think they'd give me my driver's license.
No.
But these guys are celebrating. These guys are celebrating it. Well, the reason they couldn't do it was back in 2003, we didn't have the technology. Now we know that every genetic pair is changing every 40 seconds based on epigenetics. So when we're talking about these brainwaves, they change your epigenetics. They change who you show up as. So it's very normal during the day to wake up with a high. You should now, 2/3 of America isn't sleeping right. And I think that could translate to the world today.
Sure.
But then in the process, if we wake up in a high degree of delta, what that's telling us is it's like pulling a parachute throughout the day. And at the end of the day, when you get to your couch, your chair to sit down, relax, next thing you know, you're sleeping. Well, if you're one of those people, you have a dysregulated brain. Now at night, we should have 70% delta, like right before sleep. That'd be perfect. We go to sleep, we recharge. So we have sessions for going to sleep, which we train the brain to go into a deep state of delta. Mm-hmm. And we have sessions that train for that SMR training. We call it digital coffee in the morning to wake the brain up. In a lot of my lectures the little reels we do and things like that now, I'm explaining what we call brainwave symphony, because we have a symphony of brainwaves. No one brainwave is ever active alone. If you only have one single brainwave, you usually have a mental disorder. Give you an example. If you were autistic, I could guarantee you, I would bet all of Chris's money on the fact that they have little or no alpha activity. Right? Because alpha, when we did a study with Joe Quita-Handy out of California, and we found that once we got the autistic children up to about 23 to 25% alpha activity, they began to speak.
Non-speaking kids?
Yes, non-speaking. She's a speech pathologist.
So for the average person that wants to know where their brain activity is at, I mean, from the explanation that you've just given us, you could probably figure out between whether it's playing the video games, or would that equate to just being on your phone for a long period of time and scrolling, those kind of things?
We did a study in Provo, Utah with a group called Fusion Health, and they were doing amino acids for the brain for addiction, and they were getting phenomenal results. And I said, well, I think we could help you getting better results. They go, what do you mean? I said, well, have them do brain tap while they're doing it, while they're on the IV. Cool. And we did an experiment where we could measure it through urine analysis, and we found out they were absorbing 30% more nutrients while they were doing brain tap, because what they were doing other than that was they were doing their phone. So they're stressing out, answering emails, texts, whatever.
No.
So when we could get them to reboot by doing a relaxation session at the same time they're doing an IV, the body would absorb it. So there's a big difference there. A lot of times we just want to get out of the state we're in. Like we're stressed out, we're angry, we're upset, whatever. So you want to go do something, but unfortunately a lot of those things we go do are negative, So, I mean, if they always pick positive things, like I'm going for a run, I'm going for a walk, I'm going to go do yoga. They don't usually do those things. They usually go, I'm going to go have a drink, I'm going to go smoke a joint, I'm going to do whatever. And that kind of screws them all up.
Yep. Go and find the food of choice for comfort, cookie, donut, something sweet, because you're looking for that instant gratification or that instant lift from where you're at. I think right now, because we've talked about brain tap quite a bit, and I'm more familiar with it because obviously I've done more research for that. But for our lovely loyal listeners, can you please explain the brain tap and its brilliance and all of that? So, and then because everybody's probably halted on, what is this thing that he's talking about?
Well, brain tap is an app that you can use on your phone. And by the way, the Brazilian study was all done through the audio only. Oh, so. We wanted to show that you didn't have to buy the headset to get the results. Great. It just takes longer. Okay. It takes about twice as long to get those results, but you can still get them. So you can get the app, you can start using it. And what happens is every time you listen, you get a different brainwave profile. But instead of like neurofeedback, where you have to do something, even though you don't think you're doing anything, you're just sitting there looking, maybe you're watching sailboats, and I'm only saying this because some people have probably been through neurofeedback. Neurofeedback has never had a study. And I put out $1,000 to people. I said, hey, you bring me a study that shows me neurofeedback has worked past the time when you paid for the 40 sessions.
Right.
I'll give you $1,000. The problem is it's like going to the gym and we go work out. We have a great trainer. And then we go, I'm tired of paying this guy $100. I'm going to train myself. And then you realize you forget going to the gym because you don't have that pressure anymore. Yeah. So neuro training is really good if you own the equipment. The problem is it's $27,000 typically. But what we can do is, when you talked about what can people do today with brain tap, you just put it on, follow the sequence. There's a sequence to every one of them. And like our power user access, we have all these different levels. They start at number 1 and go through them. They're going to train the brain to do that. With brain tap, we're going to use sound. We're going to use isochronic tones and binaural beats. What that is, the best example I can give is, let's say that we're all out to dinner. Yep. We're having a conversation and somebody 3 tables over says something about wow, I'm doing this podcast. And because they say the word podcast, because we're all doing podcasts, that's in the top of our mind. We hear podcast 3 tables away, but we don't hear anything else.
Mm.
Or they say the name of your sports team you like or something like that. All those things, that's your reticular activating system.
Yes.
And so they call it the default mode network too, depending upon who you're talking to. So in the process, that's always scanning your environment. So that is actually picking up light, sound, and vibration. Now we make it into computer screens. We make it into the sun. We make it into clouds and trees and other people. But the reality is, as information goes, it's all just light, sound, and vibration. Mm-hmm. At the core of everything's the same. You know, when we drill down, like that Power of 10 video that people probably have seen. So in the process, what we're doing is we're going to use sound to trigger this primitive brain, and we're going to get it with a frequency. They now know that certain frequencies can cause our body to have a feeling as if we're in those environments. Give you an example. Do you like going to the ocean and hearing the waves?
Absolutely. I love to sail. That's a favorite thing to do.
So when you're on the water, you're hearing the waves, listening, watching the light, you're actually in a isochronic tone generator. That water actually vibrates at a resonant frequency of 10 hertz. So your body then matches that frequency. You know, like some people say, I don't get a good vibe about that person. Well, intuitively, they knew if we had listened to that more, we probably wouldn't have as much trouble in our world. But in the process, we are always vibrating and teaming with energy. So we're going to use sound to do that. Yes. And what happens is the cells, every cell has, just like if you were a child and you were in danger, you would curl up in a ball, right? Well, every cell does that. They call it the cell danger response when it's hit by certain frequencies. So healing frequencies, it opens up and become, hey, I'm here. This is great. But let's say we're getting hit by 5G frequency and we have no way to mitigate it. So that's 50 million pulses per second hitting the cell. The cell is trying to figure out, what does that mean? Because when it gets a frequency from the sun, let's say it gets a red light frequency of 650 nanometers, which is healing to the body, and it says, oh, come on in here. My cells love this. Feed my cells this light, but then it will absorb and use that light energy. What we've done is we've taken sound, what they've done since the 1800s, and balanced the brain with it. We're going to use isochronic tones, which are a mono frequency. So you can use that in an open room. Some people use our app just beside their bed and they go to sleep with it. But we recommend earphones because that's going to work even better. Got it. And then we've married that with what we call binaural beats. Now, I'll explain binaural beats because some people might not know, but it's, let's say that we want to go alpha. We were talking about that just a second ago, 10 hertz frequency. I'd put a 300 hertz frequency in one ear and a 310 hertz frequency in the other. Yeah. The brain would not hear either of those. It would hear a phantom sound of 10 hertz. Believe it or not, you're doing that all the time. What you think you're hearing in the world is not what you're hearing in the world. You're hearing what your brain in its position in space and time are developing. That's why, you know, when somebody listens to headphones, they have Bose or Apple or whatever. That's why there's so many different pairs of headphones, because not everybody has the same hearing. Everybody had the same exact hearing and the same exact way to hear things. We could come out with a perfect headphone and everybody would like it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So also through our eyes, we do the same thing. Now, some people go, why do you use the lights in the eyes? Well, have you ever been to a lecture and you couldn't hear the lecturer, but then you moved your line of sight? Now you finally can see the lecture. Now you can hear them.
And it takes it in? Yes. And I'm just going to pause you there for a second, because if people have not seen the unit, it is a headset, and then it's also goggles.
Basically, these lights in the eyes, they flash, because if we keep the eyes active, what happens to most people, if I was to put the average person who's never meditated, put them on a QEG, tell them to close their eyes, immediately they're going to start a sleep cycle. They're going to fall asleep. That's why if you've ever been to the symphony and, you know, you're looking around, half the people are sleeping for $250 a night, you know, they don't realize that's more expensive than a Holiday Inn, right? But the problem is the music was relaxing. It was alpha. That's Baroque classical music. That's 10 hertz frequency. Okay. They're not used to being there. So the brain is trying to escape. So in this case, it will escape to sleep. Sometimes if you're listening to Metallica, you're going to usually escape to action. You know, you're going to go do something. Hopefully.
It has a very different effect.
When I fall asleep to my wife's favorite movie, The Notebook, it's actually, I'm really enjoying it. It's just my brain's not been there very often and it's trying to escape. Is that what it is? Right. I'm actually in an alpha tone. So I'm trying to figure out a way to explain to her why I keep falling asleep during the Notebook.
Yeah.
Right.
And you
Well,
don't get
part of it is
telephones saying, come on, watch with me.
Yeah. Part of it is there's a saying that Buddha had over 5,000 years ago. He said, all unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons. So I don't know if that plays in there.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Okay.
The brain, your brain is always trying to figure it out. Like when we watch a movie, believe it or not, we're going to be one of those people in that movie. We're either going to be Freddy Krueger chasing them down, or we're going to be being chased by Freddy Krueger. Or if you're watching The Notebook, you're either going to be the doctor trying to solve the problem, or, one of the lovers,
Right.
You're going to die in each other's arms. And I hope I didn't give that away if you haven't seen that all the way to the
No, Chris has not seen the end. That was a spoiler alert because he always falls
They
asleep.
die? Really? Oh.
Any information and details expressed during this podcast can be found at sproutright.com or leannephillipson.com.
So with the Brain Tap, you have the headphones on, and then the light is, you've got your eyes closed and the light's kind of coming into your brain. And the combination of the two of those, if you have the headset, and you've just said that you can just use your own headphones, that's the impact. That's the beauty of what it is. But I've listened to a few of them, a few of the meditations. Is that what you call them? And it's your voice, which is tremendous. And really what I found is there's a lot of, hypnotic suggestions that you're speaking about with the ones that I've listened to as well, which is, it's very cool because I can hear the music in the background. I was actively listening to say, like, what is this? What's happening here? And, before we had our discussion. So there's the power of suggestion. There's the opportunity for everything that you're recommending, focus during your day, health, making healthy choices and things like that, which I think is tremendous. All the while you've got the music or the beats and the frequency going on. So, and you're just sitting down and relaxing.
Right.
So it's almost like a workout.
That's why we call it brain fitness, because we can measure that, the electrical activity or the energy exchange. Also, for people that haven't seen it, there's lights in the ears too. So when people go, why do you have lights in the ears? Every cell of our body has something called a chromophore, which is a little battery. And that battery is absorbing energy in this, of course, from nutrients and things too, but from light, sound, and vibration. So when we put it in the ears, that's when we found out with the autistic children, because they couldn't listen the same way that we listen. So we had to speak to them in frequency, not in words. So we have a lot of sessions that are just music, frequency, and, it's just a light and sound journey with no words. The body's being instructed by the frequency response, just like you'd be instructed unconsciously when you go to the beach and you sit down to relax, or if you're going to the mountaintop. Like a lot of people go, they think yoga, meditating, a yogi in the mountains, they want to get there. Well, that yogi in the mountains is actually meditating at 7.8 hertz frequency. They're already in a deep level of theta before they even
they're
start.
In the mountains.
Yeah, because they're in the mountains, and the mountains has that frequency.
Okay, so different frequency from the water, from while I'm out sailing or just down on the beach, to just being in a different place in a mountaintop. Now, what if you're in the middle of, Times Square, New York City?
That's probably 22 cycles per second. That's a lot of high anxiety.
Yes.
There are certain people. I remember when I lived in California, I used to live in the Bay Area, and I took a group to New York to an event, and one of my friends wanted to go. She runs horses in Livermore, which is like country USA. Yep. And I said, she wanted to really go see the shows. She literally got sick the first day. She went home. She could not handle all of that activity because she was so used to being out with her horses and just kind of having a lazy, relaxing day. And it was just too much energy for her. So when she got bombarded with that beta, her brain, she wanted to escape. There's nowhere to escape in New York, right? No. You go into your hotel room, you're going to see out the window, all the craziness that's out there. So,
and in that high beta, would that have suppressed her immune system?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right.
There's something called psychoimmunology that is really big right now. They've shown that people in fear, anxiety, and frustration, their immune system doesn't work as well. We have a thinking immune system. Yes. So it's all the time absorbing. The other side of it is that we know that we project light. It's not just we receive light from the sun. Yes. You probably know Tom Brady, right? The football player. Well, he has clothing called TB12. That clothing was designed by our science officer. And what he did was he put ceramics into the clothing. And the reason for that is we all emit 810 nanometer light, 810 to 860 nanometer light. Yeah. And what he did for Tom Brady, just put his name on it. He doesn't tell people about the science because all he has to do is say, hey, I'm Tom Brady. I'm wearing this clothes. I'm 40 years old. Look at me, but the reality is
everybody wants it.
Yeah.
Marketing 101.
Yeah. What's really happening is our own body's infrared light is shining back. A study they just did that my science officer's finding so we can use copies of it, is that, when somebody's in a state of grace and love, forgiveness, in a good space, in other words, they actually give off 200 times more light than people who are in a state of depression, fear, anxiety. Mm-hmm. So when you think about what happened during COVID, I mean, everybody's light got dampened because we weren't interacting, we weren't outside, we weren't doing the things we love to do, and that crushes our soul. So we need to get out there and start doing it. And that's why light, sound, and vibration is so important. Eating healthy. All these things are so important right now that we take back our health just so that we can feel good. Most people are feeling so bad, they don't know how to feel good. We live in an energy economy. And as soon as people understand that, if you can, whatever you do, you're increasing or decreasing your energy. You're either making a deposit or withdrawal. So if you want to go out and have a couple drinks, then you go out and have a couple drinks, but know that your body's you're going to have to make a deposit, to make up for that. And some people, it's different foods. So I think that the reality is that we have to, as I said before, we have to look at every day. That's why biohackers are so big right now for us. I know. Even like we did a dementia study where we showed 49% improvement in neuroplasticity in 6 weeks. And then we went to India and we showed that you could do this with pranayama breathing. You could do the same thing. So what I like to do is take ancient traditions and make modern technology out of them, because you can do it. The yogis are doing it right now. And as another example, just so listeners know from the different perspectives, we did a psilocybin study with a Dr. Rosenthal. He had a group of soldiers that come back and they were suffering from PTSD. Yeah. And he said, we want to do a psilocybin. We want to use BrainTap. What do you think? And I said, well, I've never done anything with gamma.
And what's psilocybin for anyone that doesn't know?
It's mushrooms. So it's plant-based medicine but there were a group of them that said, I don't want to take that. I'm in AA or whatever, I'm drug free. I don't want to do this. So what we did was we measured the brains of those people doing a psilocybin. And then I developed some BrainTap sessions and found out that they were high gamma. So those are on our app now. People are having a psilocybin trips without a psilocybin. Even cannabinoids like the CBD and all that, that's just your brain's reaction to a substance. Your brain is reacting to it. So your brain can do it if you get the right triggers. So what we're doing is we're triggering it through, and that's why the Brazil study, they're calling it a digital drug.
Can you speak to mental health, mental wellness? And this is something that I've heard in the journey that I've had with my daughter. I don't know that a doctor has necessarily said this. It's probably come out from a psychiatrist or someone, that there's a chemical imbalance in mental health sufferers. Each
of those brain waves I'm talking about are responsible for instructing different chemical reactions in the body. Okay. So if your brain waves are off, your neurochemistry is going to be off. Right. For instance, beta is the serotonin. Delta is serotonin. So people that have high delta are overproducing serotonin. Then they're giving them prescription drugs to hold the serotonin in their brain, which is, to me, counterproductive. Right. But if they get into alpha, for instance, that's acetylcholine. That's the feel good. That's why we like to do those hobbies, and we'll spend all of our money on those hobbies because we get that neurochemical release. Right. When we get into theta, there's something called GABA that is released. GABA is the precursor to DMT. So if you want to have a spiritual experience, you want to have a deep, meaningful journey. Mm-hmm. Produce more theta. People who do lucid dreaming get into those. Now, these are all natural to our body all the time. We need each of these neurotransmitters every day. Okay. So the problem is, though, when we use them up because of stress or we're not getting enough sleep, and I would say sleep is the cornerstone of all of these things. Mm-hmm. That's why one of our pillars is sleep better. Yeah. Is that if we get people sleeping better, then the innate intelligence of the body takes over and can produce all those neurochemicals. When you think of thought, like if I said to you, I want you to think of your favorite vacation. Okay. Okay. When you thought of that vacation, you thought of a picture, sounds, experiences, all of that. You actually went to more than 9 places in your brain to get all that information. And it wasn't in the right hemisphere or the left hemisphere, it was in both. It had to flow through the hippocampus. It had all of this neuroactivity had to happen. Your brain literally lit up for a moment because that was a positive memory and it was probably easy to get. Right, and hopefully the negative ones are a little harder to get. But every time you bring up a memory, we revivify it. We all know people that say, I've been in therapy for 10 years. I go, God, for what? My God, you're not even the same person 3 days from now. Who are you 10 years from now? But if you go there and you keep talking about your past, you keep bringing, that's the revivification. We keep bringing it to life.
That's what Joe Dispenza talks about. That's the cornerstone of what he does. I was listening to him earlier in the week, and every morning he talks about you get up and then what you're I can't remember his turn of phrase, but you're wired and you're ready to go and you're thinking about all the things. And what do? You pick up your phone and you don't even think about it. Then you're under stress, and then the blue light, and then it kind of makes you think, oh, what am I supposed to do in the morning? Well, I think now you're supposed to put your headphones in, do one of the brain tap sessions for sure before you hit the coffee pot or anything else like that. So
I always tell people, if you drink coffee before 10 o'clock, you probably have a problem with your nervous system isn't functioning because you just slept all night long. Why do you need energy? You're in bed. It seems better that you might need that energy in the afternoon if you needed to do something. If you just enjoy a cup of coffee, then do it at 10 o'clock. Then wait.
If you've got that brain fog, if you've got that, can't get out of bed sort of feeling, then we've talked about this before, haven't we, Chris, where, when was your last meal or what was your last drink, or, your liver's still detoxifying overnight, leaving you feeling really pretty crappy. So it's not the wake up, get the coffee thing. It's like, what happened in the last 24 hours or more?
Right. Our brain shrinks 3/4 of an inch every night when we sleep from dehydration and detoxification. If we don't get up in the morning and give it some minerals like sea salt and things like that in water, I usually get up and have 2 glasses of water, sea salt, and I do my morning supplements that I do. And I do niacin every morning. If somebody has a mental problem, I would start to include more and more niacin.
And what about those people that do the alarm, the 4 alarms, the snooze, the this, the that? That can't be good for your brainwaves.
If somebody listens to me often, they're going to hear that alarms should be outlawed. What they do to the nervous system, they light up the nervous system. If you're going to use an alarm, find something that will play some nice music, maybe that will wake you up. Better yet, find one of those new alarms that wakes you up to light. If you can think about back in ancient times, we got up with the sun.
So just to wrap up the mental health thing. So there's different brain waves that are going on in a state of depression versus anxiety. Is there?
Yes.
Or
the depressed brain is going to be that's that delta brain I'm talking about.
Okay.
We did a study with Googlers. They were the top producers with Julia Arndt. She's a high performance coach. Yeah. And we had them do brain tap, but we had them do a series of battery of tests first because we were tracking it for research.
Sure.
And we didn't tell them, but 70% of them were clinically depressed. These were the high performers. At the end of the study, yes, they didn't even know it. And that's true with most people. They don't know they're depressed. They don't know they're anxious. And what happens is boom, it happens. They're functioning one day, they're not the next. But the great resignation is happening today because people are recognizing that they're not fulfilled. They're not happy. They're not satisfied. Things aren't happening for them. So when we showed them with BrainTap, actually they improved their scores over 60% during the 6-week study, but we were actually able to also help them get 19% more efficiency, which is almost impossible. I go, these are the top performers. I don't know if we can help. It's like, how do you improve on an A student? Right, but because Google actually records every keystroke and everything like that, they could actually measure it.
Wow. All right. So talking about optimizing yourself, if we can, I'm aware of your time, so I don't want to keep going too long, but, you brought up biohacking. I've talked about that over the past few episodes since episode 125, just introducing listeners to all of this. We talked about the red and the near infrared light box. Is there something, I know you've got a biohacking conference coming up, a virtual conference, which I have signed up for. So that's tremendous. I'm looking forward to that very much. And so I can imagine, but you tell me that using BrainTap is a number one way for biohacking. But let's just hear some of your tips about that.
I think it can't be the only thing.
No, obviously.
So what we do is if you came to visit us here in New Bern, North Carolina,
Yep.
I could take you through a 17-station biohacking lab that would blow your mind, because a lot of it is
Wow.
stuff I invented that is not available because it was too expensive, but we
Right.
can't get rid of it. So it's
Right.
still-
So you still
there.
have people through it. Nicely done.
But I think that one thing you need to do more than anything else is we need to get our brain right. That's why like Dave Asprey, Jim Quick, all those people that are out there are using BrainTap, is because they realize that it's kind of like the icing on the cake. And we just published a paper that we're going to be presenting again in September to the Life University. A chiropractor in Michigan took every high school student that got a concussion, from cheerleaders to football players. And for 1 year, they ran through a study. And at the end, when they returned to play, a year from there, they went back and did neurological testing. 50% of them got BrainTap at the end of their training. They didn't use it at home. They didn't get the app. They didn't do anything. They just used it during therapy. A year later, when we did the test, this is going to be published now. It's actually already available on Amazon in our published papers. But we showed a 30 to 70% neurological improvement across the board for anyone using BrainTap. So whatever you do at the end of it, do BrainTap, because everything you're doing is going to stress out the brain. So we need to get the brain back balanced again. So it can then, we want to stress out the brain, but then we want to relax the brain. The biggest thing people are missing in biohacking, in my thought, and that's why we're so involved with it, is recovery. Most people don't take the time to recover. We're still stuck in that mode of 70s and 80s where we go, get it.
Stop. So really, BrainTap could be used, whether it's headphones or it's the unit, really for anything from any sort of mental health type disorders. I would imagine even an eating disorder.
Yeah. We have programs for eating disorders, as well as from being overweight to, having bulimia. We just finished a session called Overcoming Overwhelm for people with long haulers and things like that because their body just can't function anymore. I mean, whether it happened with the vaccine or not, or it happened through just having COVID, the body's not clearing those things out. It's just like anything else. Some people will clear out faster than others, and we need to help them with that.
Yep. Well, we learned in my DNA analysis that I don't clear things out very quickly. So I'm going to put my hand up on that one. I definitely need help on that front. Well, can you share, just to finish off, your favorite success story? Let's say you've quoted many studies and things like that, but there's got to be a story that really touched your heart.
There's been a lot that were personal ones with people losing weight and stopping smoking, things like that. But the one that was relatively new that blew me away was, he was being interviewed on ESPN, Corey Anderson, and they asked him, you knocked this guy out in 42 seconds. What happened? He said, well, I was in the locker room before the match, listening to my BrainTap, and I was listening to Step into the Spotlight of My Life. And at 42 seconds, I saw myself knocking the guy out. And he walked out in the ring and knocked the guy out. So we have a lot of boxers now. So I think that, it's just proof that if you can visualize it, you can realize it. You can make, whether it be, we have hundreds of stories. If they go out there and hit the hashtag BrainTap, they're going to see one of the stories they'll see on there that's really cool is the exchange student for American Pie, the movie. One of our doctors sold her a BrainTap, and without us knowing it, she went on and did a 3-minute video.
So I've been doing this almost every night. Sometimes I fall asleep, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wake up right at the end. And what's cool is that you've got the meditation within it, but you also have some background influences that are working on your subconscious. So I just think it's this really cool thing that I'm going to use for a very long time. And every time friends come over, I kind of make them do it. And then they get hooked.
Wow. Well, you are having impact. And I probably imagine you're very, very close to your goal of 1 million people. And through coming on Eat This with Leanne, you've touched, many, many more lives. So thank you so much for your brilliance. Thank you so much for your research. Thank you so much for everything that you do and sharing. I will, in the show notes, on the podcast platforms and also on leannephillipson.com, put some links there for you to be able to just download download the app you can do that as Patrick has said. And then also, if you want to use the headset, give that a try. I'm definitely going to give it a shot and stick it on my daughter, whether she likes it or not. She's 16. There could be some resistance there. Mom, not another thing again, that sort of thing. And I'll report back. Thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to us today. And yeah, I'm so glad that this will also help you reach your goal of supporting 1 billion people out there. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks.
So we did mention about when Dr. Barkenshire said about his experience, Chris, on the plane in episode 127. He was talking about pain and just, his flight. We brought that up already, but, it's always nice to hear stories from other people. And I think we've just, all of us have just learned like 1 million stories from the influence of light and sound.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, there's no way to pull one thing from that. So just basically just keep it in the hard drive of your phone.
Definitely a download, save, and re-listen.
Yep.
Now, because this is called Eat This, I'm just going to very quickly highlight some of the foods. So we already know, you've heard me say it 1 million times, sugar, not great. Probably one of the worst things for your brain, along with alcohol. Definitely detrimental to the brain.
Depressive yeah, it's no good for it. I don't drink, don't eat anything fun.
Depressive disorders and sugar, processed food, most packaged foods, they're just not great for your brain. So start elbowing them out. Get more of those greens in there, those colorful fruits and vegetables, those berries, cherries, beets, zucchinis, peppers, green beans, sugar snap peas. From the market the other day, got some beautiful plums and peaches. And oh gosh, they're so delicious. And really, as much as you possibly can, try and get organic or as minimal sprays as possible, because that is actually neurotoxic, meaning to your brain and to your nervous system. There's some supplements. Always, if you're not really at a place where you're getting everything from food, then try out my Take This by Leanne Kid Boost so that your brain acts more like you were when you were a kid. You need some extra magnesium bisglycinate, liposome B complex, which has B6 and B12 for your methylation, just a really key biochemical process to help your detoxification, all your body systems and all of that. And then also the essential fats from omega-3s. So that clean fish, eat your avocado, or, you can also take Omega Boost, which is a part of my line, my foundational line of supplements. And then Dr. Porter. I was going to say Patrick. Dr. Porter, please edit that out. Dr. Porter also talked about the gut-brain axis. So really making sure that you've got a handle on the microbiome, as many good bugs as possible and not as many of the bad bugs. So that comes in the form of possibly taking Bio Boost, which is another one of my line, but also really just taking out as much sugar as you possibly can is the first step in cleaning up your gut. If you do have some booze, try and stick to the cleaner spirits, not mix it with, a soda pop, but maybe just soda water. Eat tons more fiber. Your gut bugs love it. And really just start taking that probiotic, or check out the biohacking bundle on sproutright.com, because I started that one in episode 125 and people are absolutely loving it. Now, over on over on LeannePhillipson.com, if you're actually interested in checking out BrainTap for yourself, then I've got a couple of links there. Whether you want the unit itself, it does retail at $647. That's US dollars. There's a link for some app bundles there as well, which you can get, or you can actually just try it out with a 15-day gift. They've given me a link specifically for Eat This listeners, so you can check it out with that. Now, I'm definitely going to dive into that 21-day series that Patrick just spoke about over the next, I'm going to start it on the 2 weeks, Chris, while we're off, because we're both going to take some downtime. Chris, you've got some time coming up with your family, haven't you? You're going to go away and hit a lovely beach to maybe get those sounds, are you?
That's the plan. Yeah. You know what? We're actually thinking about taking a hot air balloon ride too, which might be a whole other kind of experience when you kind of get above the noise.
Yeah. Excellent. I love it. So we are shutting down for a couple of weeks. Anyone listening to the podcast, there will still be shows. Chris is going to magic those up for our regular radio show. And during these 2 weeks, I'm going to really notice myself too. When I get out sailing a little bit more, I'm going to commit to doing the morning and the evening brain tap on the app. I don't have the headset. I'm going to try out just what he said. You don't need the headset as well as the headphones. Yeah, the whole unit. So I'm going to give this a try. If it takes a little bit longer, like he said, that's absolutely fine. So thank you so much to the brilliance of Dr. Porter, to all the guests that we've had on since January. And if we're calling this a whole season, I guess this is like, we just keep going normally. We don't have seasons, do we really, Chris? We just decided, okay, we talk about shutting down for a little while so much. We implore you to really take care of yourselves. And then we realize, actually, we need to do that for ourselves too. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to recoup. We're going to just, find other things to do, give ourselves some space and just really see what unfolds. Thank you so much to all of our lovely loyal listeners for showing up to better your brain, better yourself, be an inspiration to all of those around you. I'm truly grateful that you're here, that you've subscribed, that you download, that you rate the podcast, and really especially show up for yourself and take the time to listen. So thanks as always for being along. Head over to leannephillipson.com, sproutright.com. Follow me on also those social media channels for more information. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And of course, please remember to eat this one mouthful at a time.